all night long. Fancy helping some faces, young and old, to warm the hearts when it's snowing and it's cold. You're gonna have to find a crew, it can't be anyone. They'll have to be there by your side and do what must be done. So go, man, you know that you have it night through day. The pain you will feel it to bring it on with the Archer County Band. Doubts come and some may never die. So I'll ask myself, should I stop before I try? No way, man, mistake, it has been said. I'm all in, so there's nothing I'll regret. But time is ticking and there's so much that's going through my mind. Will I make it? Yes, I will. Our spirits are entwined. So let's get this show on the road. I'm here, I'll stay and I'll carry the load to bring it on with the Archer County Band. But hold on a second now, I'm starting to feel the strain. Was it a bicycle? What is wrong with my brain? Is it the end of me? No, I must still believe. So I'm still alive, you see. Heck yeah, now I'm on my way. But let's stay focused, there's still a job in hand that we must do. Good evening, folks. You are very welcome to Bandido Talks. We are live Friday evening, 7 p.m. here on YouTube. It's the first live stream of the weekend. So the Bandido's in particularly good form tonight because we're going to have a run of 3 straight shows, Friday, Saturday and Sunday. Get the weekend off to a fire-cracking start. Of course, Friday evening can only mean one thing. It can mean let's reflect. It can only mean let's reflect. What do I mean by that? Well, every Friday we have our Let's Reflect live stream where we do a little bit of reflection upon our Tuesday upload. Tuesday's upload was a best bits episode with a compilation of highlights from last week's shows. So we're going to get into all of that tonight. Episode 20, The Two Suckers. What does that mean, says you? It's all going to become clear. Stick with us, folks. It'll all become clear in the next 60 to 90 minutes. Who knows how long the Bandido's going to go on for? Because sometimes I think, oh, maybe it'll be 60 minutes. And then it goes to 70 minutes. Then it's 80 minutes. Then it's 90. Then it's 100 minutes. We're over an hour and a half. You never know when you jump on the live stream how long the show's going to be. But let's just say the next 60 to 90 minutes. Let's cap it at that. We're going to get into all things suckers. Now, of course, we did, on last Sunday's show, we had another gremlin in the stream. The Bandido only found out about it whenever he was reviewing the show that night. The gremlins are really trying to derail us here on Bandido Talks, but they will not succeed. The Bandido will prevail. The Bandido's audience will prevail. So you would have seen last Sunday's show, episode 19, I once again had to split it up into 2 parts because of the gremlin who was wreaking havoc around the 60-minute mark. The audio and the video went out of sync. So the Bandido has been trying to figure out why I keep falling out of sync with such regularity. So I think I've got it right tonight. I've had to make a whole bunch of changes. Change things up in the streaming software, all of that. So hopefully tonight's stream will run smoothly, without any kinks, without any hiccups, without any gremlins. So of course, folks, if something goes out of sync, please do let me know in the live chat. Let me know and say, Bandido, you are not in sync. Your body is doing one thing, but your words are doing another. Anyway, that was the gremlin last Sunday. Now, of course, there are a few things to update you folks on. Last week I was talking about getting some of the guest interviews ready. We have our first guest interview ready to be uploaded this Tuesday. It will be uploaded as a premiere at 7 p.m. on Tuesday. So that is our first guest interview. I've been talking about getting guests on the show, trying to get people on so that we can learn lessons from real people doing real, useful, valuable things in the world. So that first guest interview will be coming this Tuesday. So put that in your diary, folks. Put it into the diary next Tuesday at 7 p.m. What date is that? That would be next Tuesday let me have a look here. Next Tuesday, the 2nd of September. So next Tuesday, the 2nd of... Did I say September or December? I can't even remember. Basically, all you need to know, folks, is next Tuesday, the 2nd of December, you will have your first guest interview, your first guest episode. I'm not going to spoil too many things. I'll be plugging it across our shows this week. Let's just say this person has a lot of experience in business. Their business has been going for 38 years, so this person knows a thing or two about keeping a business going for a very long period of time. Shall I drop a few more hints? Well, I'll drop one more hint. So you know that the person we are talking to is involved in running a business that's been active for 38 years. This person is also in the clothing, fashion,
menswear sector. Don't want to give away too much. But they're in the clothing sector. They've been in that sector, been in business for almost 4 decades. So there is a whole bunch, I think, that we can learn from such an individual. The interview was very insightful. I found it very valuable. Tune in on Tuesday, 7 p.m, the 2nd of December, where you will be able to catch our first guest episode here on Bandido Talks. So we've got a guest interview coming this Tuesday, 7 p.m, here on YouTube. It will be a premiere. What else? Before we get into tonight's show, the Bandido's working on another little project as well that's related to this channel. It is a musical project. Music. Some original music. The Bandido, you always see his guitar to his left. So the Bandido's trying to put his musical skills to use. Something that you may not know about the Bandido is he enjoys a bit of the old songwriting. He likes to sit down, try to write a song or two, put together a little composition. He tries to sing. He does his best to stay in pitch. So the Bandido will be bringing some original demos. They aren't going to be polished. They aren't going to be fancy studio productions. They will be made here in this little studio where we do Bandido Talks. And I will be uploading those. So they will be uploaded with their own separate playlist. Those will be coming in the incoming weeks. I've got a whole bunch of songs. A lot of songs, actually. Now, there's one thing having songs. There's another thing being able to do up an arrangement, being able to sing them, record them properly. So it'll take a little while, but it's something that I'm going to do here on the channel. So we've got Bandido Talks. We've got plenty of Bandido talking. But we're going to get some Bandido sings. The Bandido is going to sing, do a little bit of entertaining in the musical sphere with some original songs. Now, why original songs? Why would I not just do cover songs? 2 main reasons. Number one, there are a whole bunch of people on the internet who do cover songs. And they will do cover songs much better than me. I'm not particularly good at covering other people's music. I'm not really that good at music in general. Bit of an average musician. I've made a lot of progress, that is true, in the last number of years. The Bandido started his musical journey in 2022. So progress has been made, but when it comes to covers, there are a lot of other people on the internet who can do covers much better than me. So as a result, I don't really think I've got much to contribute in the form of covers, in terms of actual quality. So that's one reason. There are lots of other people who do covers much better than me. Do I really need to add yet another cover onto YouTube with my average musical skill? One could argue no. So that's one reason. What's another reason? Well, another reason is, I know. Well, this would be reason number 2, actually. These are the 2 main reasons. So the second reason would be, I know and I'm aware that YouTube can be a bit of a pain in the hole when it comes to copyright. So as you will perhaps notice, when we do our little introduction for our live streams, that song that you hear, as I've said before, that's a little original song demo. And the reason why I use that and not some other musical piece from another artist is because I will get slapped with copyright. And I don't want that, because if you get slapped by copyright infringement, let's say, the channel can get a strike, it can get another strike, and then before you know it, you've got 3 strikes and you're out in your hole on the street. And there'll be no more Bandido Talks. We'll have to go over to Rumble exclusively if that happens. So, when you upload covers, there's always the risk you're going to get a copyright strike. You could get banned, and the Bandido's looking at all this and thinking, you know, I'm not even that good at covering music in general, so why bother doing that? Why bother? So instead, to avoid any copyright infringement, let's just do a few original tunes. The one thing that I can be sure of is that there will be nobody on YouTube who will have songs like mine, because they're original. That doesn't mean they're any good. That doesn't mean you're going to like them. It just means they will at least be unique. And for someone who is perhaps average at music, isn't particularly good at doing covers from other artists, the thing that I can contribute to the musical space on YouTube is some originality. Some originality. Whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether it is ugly. At least it's original. And at least it's unique. And at least it's not going to be auto-tuned or pitch corrected. You're going to have none of that. It's just going to be the vocal with some acoustic instruments. And if the Bandido Talks audience enjoys it, fantastic. If they don't, tough, because I'm going to keep uploading original tunes. So get used to it, folks. Anyway, so those are a couple of things that the Bandido has either ready to upload or is in the process of getting these bits of content together for uploading. So anyway, guest interview is coming this Tuesday, the 2nd of December. Tune in, it will be a premiere, Tuesday at 7 p.m. here on YouTube. The first guest interview. I'm looking forward to this one. Looking forward to it. And of course, as I've said, music will be coming your way. Bandido Sings will be coming your way. Okay, so, with all of that out of the road, if of course you do enjoy our little Friday segment, our Let's Reflect segment here on YouTube, then feel free to give the stream a like. Hit that thumbs up button if you're feeling charitable, if you feel like you want to give the Bandido some feedback. Of course, if you are joining us live here on YouTube, feel free to get into the live chat. Engagement with the show is always welcome. We enjoy a bit of engagement here on Bandido Talks. Maybe the Flying Dutchman will be back. Maybe Pat Mustard will be back. Who knows? Some of our common commenters here on the show. If you're watching live, get into the chat. I would encourage you to do that. Let me know your thoughts and feedback and questions and insights about the show, whether they are actually related to the show or just completely random. All comments are welcome. If you're watching the show after the live event has been posted, get down into the comments section. The same thing applies. Let me know what you think about the show. And of course, finally, if you enjoy what we do here at Bandido Talks, if you think it's valuable, insightful, useful, in some way, then feel free to subscribe to the channel. You can see all of these things that are going to be coming your direction, all of this content. We've got our 3 live streams every Friday, Saturday and Sunday at 7 p.m. here on YouTube. So you'll always have 3 live shows every week at 7 p.m. Friday, Saturday and Sunday. The guest interviews will be coming thick and fast, hopefully. They will be uploaded every Tuesday at 7 p.m. And then, of course, once the Bandido gets his little original song compositions together, you'll have some original, unique music coming your direction from the Bandido. So if you like the sound of all that, feel free to subscribe to the channel. All of that will be coming your direction in the incoming weeks and months. So with all of that out of the road, let us get into tonight's show. Before I do that, let me make sure that there isn't a gremlin. Let's make sure there isn't a gremlin. Because we wouldn't want to keep going and then discover that we have a gremlin in our stream. Because, of course, as I've said, the Bandido has got a few new settings tonight. We seem to be doing just fine. So far, so good. Gremlin free. So anyway, let's get into tonight's show with all of that out of the road. It's episode 20. And the title of tonight's show is The Two Suckers. What does that mean? Well, before we get into what that actually means, every Friday night we have a Let's Reflect segment. So we're going to reflect on Tuesday's upload. As I said in the little introduction, Tuesday's upload was a best bits compilation. And so we had highlights from our 3 live shows last week. And tonight's show is of course going to be based off some of those highlights in that best bits compilation from Tuesday that was uploaded. And what are we going to cover specifically? So again, we had a whole bunch of highlights, a whole bunch of little bits and pieces that we could have got our teeth into. But the 2 things that I want to hone in on So the two, I suppose we could say, highlights from last week's shows that were on our Best Bits upload were these two things in particular. Number one, we talked about, especially last, I think it was episode 18, Trump, Mamdani and theatre. Good show. We had a good show. That was episode 18 last week. Last Saturday, I believe. And on that show, we talked a whole bunch about theatre on the world stage. We talked about this idea that the world, we could say the world, but in the context of episode 18, the political world is a stage. It's a theatre. And we talked about how theatricality and deception can be powerful agents to the uninitiated. And if you are uninitiated, you can get all caught up in the theatre and the drama of what it is that you're seeing on your television, of what it is that you're seeing on your computer, on your phone. You can get caught up in the drama and the theatre. And while you are caught up in the drama and the theatre, that means you are distracted. And when you are distracted, that means you are not paying attention to the actually, we could say, the important things. Because the theatre and the drama, they are used to take your eye off the ball. So when you are distracted by theatre and drama that you're seeing on the news, in media articles, on social media, the theatre and the drama is trying to sequester your attention, to actually divert your attention away from the important things that we should all be focusing on. And so episode 18, we talked all about this in the context of Donald Trump meeting, what was his name? Zoran Mamdani. I couldn't remember his first name. So Donald Trump, the President of the United States, was meeting the new Mayor of New York, Zoran Mamdani. And we talked about how Trump is changing his strategy. There seems to be this odd behaviour all of a sudden. It looks theatrical in the build-up to the mayoral New York election. It's all a bunch of theatre and drama. And we talked in that episode about how theatre and drama, theatricality, can be used to deceive the public and divert their attention towards this part of the room as a distraction, while over in this part of the room, where we should be really focusing and paying attention, the main things are happening. So that was one of our highlights. We talked about Trump and Mamdani. That was in our Best Bits highlights, one of our highlights from our Best Bits upload. What else did we have? We had another story from our Sunday special last week, episode 19, the Ukraine peace plan. So we talked about the Ukraine peace plan, and we broke this down. Actually, we went into quite a bit of detail. It was really, we had to split it up, of course, because of the gremlin, because of the technological gremlin. We had to split the episode up. So part one was all about diving into the Ukrainian peace deal that seemed to be in the works as of last Sunday. And we talked all about this on episode 19, part 1. And part 2 of episode 19, we sort of wrapped the entire episode up. We sort of got into the lesson, or lessons that we could actually take from this Ukrainian peace deal for us here on Bandido Talks. And the long and short of it was, for that particular story, one of the things that we discovered throughout our big long discussion was that in order to fund war, oftentimes the country involved has to lean on its allies. In this particular case, the Ukrainian people or the Ukrainian soldiers or military are fighting the Russian military. And so for Ukraine as a country to be able to, let's just say, compete in some way against Russia. Russia, of course, is a huge country. It has a bigger military. It is a bigger global player. So for Ukraine to be able to compete with this behemoth, this global leader who's arguably just behind the United States on the global stage, for Ukraine to be able to compete against Russia on their own, it would be basically impossible. practically impossible because Ukraine, it's too small, it doesn't have a big enough military, and it's not going to have the ability to fund a war that has been now going for almost 3 years. So, of course, on episode 19, last Sunday's episode, our Sunday special, we talked all about how could a country like Ukraine fund a war against this colossal global presence called Russia. Well, we brought in the concept of allies. Ukraine has allies. In particular, the main Ukrainian allies are Europe. And in our story on Sunday, we specifically talked about the UK, France, and Germany. And so the UK, France, Germany, and a whole bunch of other European countries are essentially acting as allies for Ukraine. And they are helping Ukraine fund their side of the war. Now, what did we talk about on last Sunday's episode, episode 19, about the Ukrainian peace plan? Well, how is it that, for example, how is it that the United Kingdom is helping to fund Ukraine? Especially when we know that Rachel Reeves, in her own words, what is she, the financial chancellor or some bollocks like that in the UK? She has some prominent role relating to finances in the UK. And Rachel Reeves, as we know from previous shows here on Bandido Talks, has always been talking about billion-pound black holes in the UK economy. So Rachel Reeves has made it very apparent that there are billion-pound black holes in the United Kingdom's economy. And so it would be fair to say that the United Kingdom, based on such an assessment, seems to be in a bit of trouble, one could say. The economy isn't great. We talked about how there's a whole bunch of inflation. The currency is being devalued. People's savings are dissolving. Things are getting pricier to buy. Wages aren't able to meet the demand of the increasing prices for items. And so it would be fair to say that the UK is having its own struggles at the moment. Which begs the question, how is the UK able to fund Ukraine and its side of the war? Because if the UK itself has a whole bunch of money problems, in Rachel Reeves' own words, billion-pound black holes, we were then talking about how the heck is the UK, with its own problems, able to then fund or part fund Ukraine's war efforts? Well, we talked about on episode 19 how one way, and it's probably the most substantial way, in which the United Kingdom's government is helping to fund their part of Ukraine's war, is the United Kingdom takes the taxpayers' money. I'm barely able even to say the words, because I was going to actually say something else. I'm going to come to this other thing in a moment. But what does the United Kingdom do? They take a part of the taxpayers' money and send it off to Ukraine. They send off part of your taxpayer money to Ukraine to fund a war that you actually haven't had a say in. And then what did the UK do in the last few days? Was anybody paying attention? Because it was almost like some sort of a prophecy was said on last Sunday's show. It was prophetic, the show. Because what happened in the last few days? We talked last Sunday on our Sunday special about how not only is the UK government taking your taxpayer money, or a portion of it, and sending it to Ukraine, not only are they doing that, but they could also do something else to acquire a little bit more moolah. And that thing would be raise taxes. They could raise taxes. And so when they raise taxes, they can take a bigger portion of your taxpayer money and send it to Ukraine. And what, of course, folks, happened in the last few days? Keir Starmer had his conference with Rachel Reeves, and they had a few changes to announce to the public, let's just say. What was it What was one of the big talking points from their conference? What's one of the new measures, one of the new policies that are going to be implemented? That's right, folks. The United Kingdom is going to raise more taxes. They're going to raise income tax. They're going to raise the tax threshold. You are going to pay more tax as of a few days ago. And so, what are we seeing here? We're seeing your money as a taxpayer. A portion of it goes to Ukraine. Now taxes have been raised. Thank you, Keir. Taxes have been raised. And so a bigger portion of your taxpayer money can now be sent away off to Ukraine to fund the war that you, to my knowledge, I believe, have still not had a say in. So, of course, there's a bit of money printing as well. Governments like to print a little bit of money. Why do you think we have inflation? Why are things so inflated at the moment? Well, that's because there's too much money has been printed. And when there's too much money that has been printed, there's too much money in circulation. When there's too much of anything, its value drops. And so the currency becomes devalued. And it means your savings are worth less. Hence they are dissolving like an ice cube in the summer heat. Okay, so that's I suppose we could say we didn't do a huge amount in terms of highlights on that particular story. We done a few. We maybe had one or two highlights about the Ukrainian story. We had a highlight or two about Trump and Mamdani, but this is what we were talking about. If you watch our Best Bits upload from Tuesday, you'll see some of this discussion in the Best Bits video upload. And if you go back to episode 18 and episode 19, you'll get very lengthy discussions about all of these things. I'm just giving you the summary. Now, why am I saying all this? Why is the Bandido saying all of this? What has this got to do with tonight's show? Well, tonight's show is called The Two Suckers. The Two Suckers. And what does the Bandido mean by this? Well, what the Bandido means is there are two types of suckers in this world that I'm going to talk about tonight. Two types of suckers. The first type of sucker is what the Bandido is going to call a gullible sucker. And the second type of sucker that we're going to talk about is what we're going to call a schlong sucker. So those are the two types of sucker that we're going to talk about tonight. A gullible sucker and a schlong sucker. And they're actually related to everything that I've just talked about. Hence why I've laid it out again, a little bit of a summary, just to get us up to speed, in case you haven't seen episodes 18 and 19. So let's get into this. We're talking about suckers. So suckers. Let's go with sucker number one. A gullible sucker. And when we're talking about gullible suckers, what is it that I'm referring to? Well, a gullible person is someone who we could say is naive in their assessment of the world. They essentially think the world works in a certain way, but because they are operating under so much distortion, whether that's just through their baseline personality distortion or information that comes in which further distorts their system and worldview, whatever it is, a gullible sucker is a person who's naive. They have a naive understanding of the world. They think the world works a certain way, which is actually objectively incorrect. And the reason why they think the world works this way is because they're operating under a whole bunch of distortion, which could be coming from their personality as a baseline or from informational inputs that are a load of shit. So they've got shitty informational inputs. And so as a result, they are distorted. That's what a gullible sucker is. And why do I talk about a gullible sucker here? Well, let's take it back to our Trump Mamdani story from last week. When you have the world as a stage, and the world is a stage, there's a whole bunch of theatre. Trust me, folks, when we watch a movie and when we watch some play up on the stage at a theatre close to you, those are not the only places where we find theatre. We find theatre in the real world as well. We find a whole bunch of theatricality. Why? Well, theatre and drama, as I've already said, can actually be used to distract people and divert their attention away from things that other people don't want you to see. That's why we have theatre. That's why we have, for example, on the internet. The internet is full of useless, absolute trash. It's full of just shit, trash, garbage information. We could call that theatre. We could call it drama. And it's not even that per se it's a problem that you consume this. We can't avoid drama. We can't avoid theatre, in a sense. Because if you are in any way engaging with the world, then you're going to be exposed to some of this theatricality and drama that takes place in the world. Whether that's through the news, whether that's in your own life when you're dealing with other people, whether it's on social media, on the internet in general. If you're plugged into society, if you're actually tuned in, if you're not locked up in your room and never go out into the world or you never interact with the internet space, then fair enough. You're maybe going to generate some other kinds of distortion because you've got literally no informational inputs. But if we are consuming information, then it is inevitable that we are going to cross paths with drama and theatre. That's not a problem in itself. So for example, when we look at the Trump-Mamdani situation, you basically have Donald Trump in the lead up to this, we could say, New York mayoral election race. In the lead up to this, before the verdict was actually made public as to who had actually won to become mayor of New York, in the lead up to this race to become mayor of New York, Donald Trump was slamming Zoran Mamdani. Slamming him. Calling him a communist, calling him this, that and the other. Completely bad-mouthing him in order to try and dissuade the public, one would have to assume, from voting for this guy. So there was this whole theatre, this whole drama in the build-up. You've got Trump criticising Mamdani, you've got Mamdani criticising Trump. There's this vicious back and forth between the two. And then what happens? Mamdani gets elected in a landslide victory to be mayor of New York. And then maybe a week or two later, Mamdani goes to the White House, to the Oval Office. Trump is in the Oval Office. And so everybody might be thinking, oh, now they're going to meet face to face. The cameras are going to be on. I'm sure it's going to be fireworks. And then what happens? It's like a wet sponge. You've basically got Trump being all chummy with Mamdani all of a sudden. So Trump's behaviour looks odd. It looks strange. Mamdani himself is a little more reserved. He's not quite as outspoken now that he's in the Oval Office. So here we have Trump and Mamdani giving it the big one in the lead up to the election for the New York mayor post. There's all this drama, all this theatre. Just like in the build-up to a boxing fight, we talked about that on that episode as well, episode 18. What happens in the build-up to a boxing fight? The promotional build-up. You get tables being flipped, chairs being thrown, punches being launched, slandering from one team to another team, promoters going at it. You get all this theatre and drama in the build-up to the fight. And then when the fighters get into the ring, finishes. What happens? They hug in the center of the ring. They kiss and make up. They say, you're great. Oh, no, you're great. You're a really good guy. No, you're a really good guy. And all of a sudden, you realize, I've been had. I've got absorbed by the drama and the theatre. It's the same thing on the political stage with Trump and Mamdani. We've got all this theatre, all of this drama. You must ask yourself, do I want to be focusing on the theatre and drama, or do I want to acknowledge that it's there, analyse why the media, Trump, Mamdani, analyse why these people and organisations want me to focus on the theatre and the drama, and then try to shift my perspective and my vision elsewhere? We could also do that. And this is the kind of thing that a gullible sucker would not do. Gullible suckers, what do? Gullible suckers get totally absorbed in the theatre and the drama. They do not look at the reasons why these political figures or these media institutions want you to focus on the drama and the theatre. They don't actually look at it from that perspective. They just get totally absorbed in it. It's all they focus on. It's all they talk about. They never actually think, hold on a second. Let me think. Why do these political figures and these media organizations want me to focus on this? Why are they showing me this? They are showing me this so that I focus on it. And if you attack it from that perspective, you may then say, well, they are showing me the theatrical, dramatic parts of the news. The theatrical, dramatic parts of these interactions between political figures. If you were then ask yourself, why? Why would they be doing that? What else is happening in the world that I should be paying attention to, but instead I'm caught up in this catfight between Trump and Mamdani? Instead, I'm caught up in this garbage that's happening over here. Some influencer has been caught cheating on some other influencer's woman. Drama, theatre. Some tit on social media is bungee jumping with a thong on. Who knows what it could be? It could be the most absurd, ridiculous thing. It's theatre and it's drama. And when you are consuming the theatre and the drama as a gullible sucker, what is going to happen to you? Well, what is going to happen to you, or what you are at an increased risk of, is other people taking advantage of you. Because if you are gullible in your worldview, if you are gullible to believe what you are being told by political figures, by media organizations, if you are gullible and you take them at face value and you give them the benefit of the doubt and you don't do your due diligence and look into the reasons as to why they may be wanting to distract you and divert your attention, if you don't do any of that and you just take information when you receive it at face value, you don't know whether it's AI generated, you don't know if it's real, you don't know if the people who are disseminating the information are sincere and have good intentions, you just take the information on board and go, oh, well, gosh, okay, gosh. There's a man bungee jumping with a thong on. Oh, gosh, there we go. Isn't that entertaining? Oh, look at that. Isn't that funny? This is the thing. We don't want to be gullible. We don't want to be gullible suckers. And that doesn't mean that we have to shut ourselves off from the world. And this is the key point here. Because somebody listening to this might say, okay, fine. I'm going to unplug. I'm going to unplug from the internet. I'm going to unplug from people. I'm going to unplug from society because I don't want my thinking contaminated. I don't want to be increasing my level of distortion. I don't want to fall for these games. You can do that, but now you're at a disadvantage in a different sense now. If you've got no informational inputs coming into the system, you can't update. Think of it like a laptop, a phone, any sort of device. You have to run updates. Otherwise, what happens to your device? If you don't run updates, things get slow. Things don't function as well. Mistakes get made with the device. You think you've saved something, but because you haven't been updating the system, all of a sudden you start losing work. You try to open a certain application, but you haven't updated it. It's now out of date. It isn't functioning properly. We need to update our information. So it's not that we want to completely isolate ourselves, unplug from everything. You could do that, but you're at another disadvantage in a different sense. So what is it that we actually want to do? What we want to do is acknowledge that there is theatre and drama in the world. That's fine. Acknowledge that we are going to be bombarded with said theatre and drama. It's part and parcel, essentially, of living. Because the theatre could be taking place in the online world, it could be taking place in the real physical world, people that you're interacting with. There could be theatre and drama happening in other people's lives. And by virtue of you meeting these people, you're exposed to it. That's fine. So we're going to be hit by theatricality. But notice the key here, folks. Remember the quote. Theatricality and deception are powerful agents to the uninitiated. So theatricality, drama, and this deception that comes with theatricality and drama to divert your attention and distract you, it is only powerful as an agent to those who are uninitiated. So what happens if you are initiated? And this is the thing. Gullible suckers, the first type of sucker that we're going to talk about tonight. Because gullible suckers are uninitiated, what does that mean? Uninitiated means they are taking things at face value. They are too earnest. They give people the benefit of the doubt too much. They give media institutions the benefit of the doubt too much. They are not critically thinking about what it is that they're consuming. They are on autopilot. That is what it means to be uninitiated. You're not thinking. You're not actively thinking. You're not being actively critical about what it is that you're consuming. You're just being a 100% consumer. And as a result, you're not actually thinking, why would people be sending this information my direction? What's their motive? And so when you are uninitiated, you have, we could say, a certain gullible outlook towards the world. You have a certain naive outlook. And because you aren't critically thinking, because you're not trying to ask the why question, why is the media telling me this about Trump and Mamdani? Why are they reporting this in this particular way? Why are they highlighting the theatre and the drama? It's not as if they're just making a passing remark about it. They are literally highlighting it. It's the centerpiece of the media article, the theatre and the drama. So if you never ask the why, you're going to end up falling closer and closer into the category of a gullible sucker. Gullible suckers being uninitiated, which means when you are uninitiated, when you have so much distorted information that's going unchecked into your brain, and that's the thing, we are going to be hit by distorted information. When I say distorted information, I mean information that's not objectively true. It's not representative of reality. We are going to be hit by factually incorrect information, inaccurate information. This is going to have the potential to create distortions in our worldview. So what do we have to do? Whenever we are hit by distorted information that's not actually representative of reality, we need to make sure that it goes through a filtering process. Think of it like water, folks. If you've got a jar or a container of dirty water, and you know the water's dirty, but you also understand that you need to drink in order to remain hydrated and to function. So you've got this jar or this container of dirty water. What can you do? You can filter the water. You don't have to throw the water away. You don't have to do that, because that might be your only source of water, or it might be an important source of water. So instead of throwing the water away, what you want to do is say, okay, I have a source of water. There is some value to this water, but currently it is a little contaminated. So instead of me just picking up the container and downing the water with all of its contamination and all its pathogens and all its dirt, all I have to do is take that container of water and pass it through a filter. And then let the filter do its work, and now you get a more pure form of water at the end as a result. We want to do the same thing with our information. When we get information, it's not that you want to deprive yourself of information. And as I've already said, that would be a mistake that you could also make. You're putting yourself at another disadvantage by literally shutting off all informational inputs. Because when you shut off all of your information that's coming into the system, if you just sit in a dark room all day, don't interact with people, and don't interact with the online space. If you do that, then that means you've got no informational inputs, which means you can't update the system. You can't update your brain. And as I've already said, what happens when you do not update any electronic device? It gets slow. It starts to not function properly. Problems arise with the device itself. And so you will have similar problems manifest themselves in your own nervous system if you do not provide new information. But then you may say, oh, but the new information's contaminated. How do I know what's the right information and what's the wrong information? Well, this is the thing. How do you know? You need to become initiated. What does that mean? You need to become a critical thinker. You need to think critically about what it is that you're consuming. If you've got a jar of water and you can clearly see that there is dirt in the water and it came from an unknown source, then you may want to say, well, before I consume this water, I'm going to put it through a filtering process. Because there could be pathogens, bacteria, and nasties in that water that could affect me, physically in this case. So instead of throwing the water away, we put it through a filter. Now, this is the thing. Is it a pain in the arse to have to filter your water? Yes, it is. Wouldn't it be just great if you could take the jar of water and start drinking it? Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that conserve energy? Yes, it would. You would have to expend less energy. You could just pick up the jar and start drinking it. But oh well, we can clearly see the water has a little bit of contamination in it. It's a little dirty. We don't need to throw the water out because there could be some value in the water, because we may not have access to any other water source at the moment. So instead of throwing the water away, in other words, instead of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, what we can do is we can take the water and put it through a filter. It's going to be more effort because we're going to have to go find a filter. We're then going to have to wait for the water to filter through because it's not going to do it instantaneously. So it is more effort having to filter your water. It is no different with your information. It is no different with your information. Whenever you are consuming information, you're going to have to do the equivalent to what you would do with a dirty water source. The water could be valuable. So let's pass it through filtering. We may have to pass it through various types of filtering. One filtering may not be enough. We may have to do it multiple times. It's the same with information. When we get information, to stop ourselves falling into the category of being a gullible sucker, we need to become initiated so that the theatricality and the drama doesn't deceive us into diverting our attention to a location of the room that isn't relevant. And because we are not going to fall for this distraction, we can now get a clear picture of what it is that's happening in our own existence. But this is the thing. That takes effort. Because what are you going to have to do? You're going to have to take the information and you're going to have to do what? You're going to have to do your due diligence on the information. You're going to have to run background checks on the sources of information. We've talked about this before, folks. You're going to have to look at the sources of information. Are they credible? Do they have a good track record with providing accurate, reliable information that's representative of reality? The information itself. Have you critically analysed it? Have you asked the why? Have you asked why? Why are they showing me this? Is this really what I should be focusing on? Or is there something else that's happening in my country at the moment that I should be focusing on? Are there other issues that are going to be more direct in their influence upon me and my own existence than this thing? Now, all of this takes effort. You are going to have to defeat your energy conservation because gullible suckers, this is what they don't do. Gullible suckers are fucking lazy. They're lazy. They're lazy because when they take information from any source at face value, when they take information as being correct, when they give people the benefit of the doubt, when they do this, what they are doing is they are offloading their thinking to somebody else because they are too fucking lazy to go and figure out if the information actually has validity or not. They're too lazy. And this is a hallmark of gullible suckers. People who have their head in the sand and their arse in the air. These people, these gullible suckers, the one thing that they all have in common is that they cannot defeat their energy conservation. They are lazy. And their laziness leads them to becoming uninitiated. And when you're uninitiated, this means you are not critically thinking. You are not actually paying attention to the sources of information and their track record with being honest and providing reliable information. And this is the thing. If you are gullible in that sense, and you are a sucker in that sense, well then you are primed to be taken advantage of. People are going to take advantage of you. You're going to be primed to be exploited. And this is what happens. Gullible suckers, they offload their thinking to other people because they can feel the energy that it's going to take for them to have to engage in a critical process that involves them thinking critically about what it is that they're consuming. People just want to get the information in the easiest way possible and not have to critically reflect upon what it is that they've just taken into their own brain. In other words, they want to offload it. They want to find the Messiah. They want to find this one source of information or these two sources of information, shut off their own thinking, and just get them to feed them information. That is what they want to do. And why do they want to do that? Why do gullible suckers do this? Because they're lazy. They are lazy and they don't want to invest the time and energy into filtering their water. Going back to our analogy, gullible suckers will take the jar of dirty water. They'll see the water and say, oh well, I'm thirsty, let's have a drink. They're going to drink the dirty, contaminated water with pathogens, bacteria, and a whole other host of nasty things. They're going to ingest that into their body, and then they're going to wonder why they have fucking diarrhea and an upset stomach. I don't feel well. I've got a sore stomach, I've got cramps in my stomach. Well, what did you drink today? What did you eat today? Oh, well, I had a glass of water from this jar. And you look at the jar and you can see the dirt floating around. You can see like a green hue on the actual inside of the jar. And you're looking at this and going, you dipshit. Why didn't you not just filter your water? Well, I was thirsty and I just wanted a drink. You are uninitiated. You are a gullible sucker. And a dipshit. Because all you had to do was filter your water. Take the water over to the filter, tip it in, wait a few minutes for the water to filter down through, and now you've got a more purified form of water. These gullible suckers do the same thing with information. Instead of having a look, instead of acknowledging the drama and the theatre that can get thrown our direction through social media, online sources, and in the real world, instead of acknowledging it and saying, okay, yes, that's theatre, that's drama, let's think critically, let's engage our own brain, let's think critically about this information that's been thrown my direction, let's have a look at the credibility of the source. If the source has a poor track record of disseminating accurate, reliable information, then I'm going to be critically thinking and going, okay, well, they've shown in the past that they have lied and been deceptive. What's to say they're not doing it again? And then when you critically think about the why are they telling me this? Why do they want to divert my attention this way? Why do they want me to be distracted? Is there something else happening at the moment that I should be focusing on, but I'm tied up in the drama and the theatre? Why do they want me to look here when I should be looking here? Gullible suckers do not do this. And the reason why they don't do it is because they're lazy. They are lazy and they are unable to defeat their energy conservation mechanism, and as a result, they offload their thinking to sources of information that they have not ran background checks on. So they don't actually know if the information is reliable and accurate. And so as a result, for all they know, they are consuming distorted information after distorted information. Their degree of distortion in their own brain goes up and up and up and up. And before they know it, they've got a completely distorted worldview. They don't know how the world objectively works. They don't know the representative facts of reality. And they have got their head deep down in the sand, with their arse high up in the air, and then someone's going to come along and take advantage of them. They're going to stick their hand in their wallet, take their money and credit cards, and be off running. This is the thing. This is what happens when you're a gullible sucker. This is what happens when you are uninitiated. When you're uninitiated and you do all of this, and you're gullible, and you allow an increasing level of distortion to creep into your worldview because you're not fact-checking information, because you're not critically thinking about what it is that you're consuming, because you're lazy and you're offloading your information to other sources that you haven't fact-checked to see if they're reliable and if they have a good track record of being reliable. If that's what you do, you're a gullible sucker. You're uninitiated and you are going to get exploited. You're going to get exploited by other people. You're going to get exploited by institutions. You will be exploited and you will sit there scratching your head wondering why you have a stomachache when you have consumed contaminated water instead of filtering the water. You will sit there and wonder, why is my stomach sore? Why is it sore? Gosh, I've got diarrhea and I've got heartburn and I just don't know. I don't know. Let me take a pharmaceutical drug to try and remedy the problem. That's what a gullible sucker will do. They will not think critically in this case as to why they have a stomachache, as to why they have diarrhea, as to why they have heartburn. They'll just go, let me take a drug. Because that's the solution. Instead of taking the jar of contaminated water and filtering it, they just drink straight out of the contaminated jar. Because they are lazy. And because they just want other people to do the hard work for them. That is fine. There will be gullible suckers in the world. And you know what, folks? We can learn from them. So I'm glad they exist. There will be gullible suckers, and I'm glad they exist. Because we can see what they do, and then try not to repeat their mistakes. So I'm glad they exist. But let's try not to fall into the trap that a gullible sucker falls into. Because that leaves us vulnerable to exploitation. From people or institutions. Okay. So that's the first type of sucker. The gullible sucker. What about the second type of sucker? Well, as we talked about, the second type of sucker that we're going to talk about tonight is the schlong sucker. The schlong sucker. What is a schlong sucker? A schlong sucker is someone who will suck off another person in order to get what they want. They will sell their own soul. They will throw people under the bus. They will scam people. In other words, they will suck anybody off, another person, an institution, whatever it is, for their own benefit, selling their own soul, selling out their people, scamming those around them so that they get what they want. That is a schlong sucker. So think of a schlong sucker a bit like think of a schlong sucker like a heterosexual male. What is a heterosexual male? A heterosexual male is a male or a man who's attracted to the opposite sex. In other words, a female or a woman. That's what a heterosexual male is. Heterosexual males are attracted to the opposite sex. Homosexual males are attracted to the same gender. They are attracted to males. So they like males. That's what they're into. So if we have, why does this keep coming up on my screen? Okay, so if we have a heterosexual male who is clearly attracted to females, but let's say this heterosexual male is a schlong sucker. So in other words, he'll sell his own soul and he'd sell out other people and scam them for his own benefit. So if you have a heterosexual male who's actually attracted to females, but an opportunity presents itself where this heterosexual male can actually gain some benefit from a deal that would actually scam other people out of resources or undermine other people for their own benefit. But part of this deal is to suck off some other male. A schlong sucker, even though they are a heterosexual male that prefers female company, what they will do is they'll suck the other male off. They'll suck him off for their own benefit, to sell out other people and sell out their own soul. Sell out what it is that they're actually interested in. This is what a schlong sucker will do. They'll literally sell their own soul, what it is that they believe in. In this case, if you have a heterosexual male, they believe that the best way to spend their romantic time would be with the opposite gender, a female. But you see, a schlong sucker, what they'll do is they'll actually sell out to themselves as well as other people. And if it means them sucking off a male to get something that they want, they'll do it. They'll do whatever it takes for the resources and the power. They'll do it. They have no problem. They have no moral dilemma whatsoever when it comes to selling out their own principles, their own moral values, and to selling out other people. That's why we call them schlong suckers. They blow with the wind. They'll blow someone off, they'll suck someone off in order to get what they want. They don't care how it really makes them look. They don't care who gets thrown under the bus as a result of doing this. As long as they gain, that's all that matters. They have no moral dilemma in their own nervous system. And so this is what we're going to call a schlong sucker will do. And they are actually at the opposite end of the spectrum to a gullible sucker. So here you have a gullible sucker who is literally on autopilot. They are offloading their thinking. They are not investing the necessary time and energy into critically reviewing sources of information. They take things at face value because they are lazy. And so as a result, they build up increasing layers of distortion in their worldview. And as a result, it is easy for them to be exploited. That's a gullible sucker. A schlong sucker is at the other end of the spectrum. They are highly manipulative. They are paying very close attention to what is in their own interest. And notice this, folks. They don't just pay attention to what's in their own interest, but what they do is they sell out their own soul as well as throwing other people under the bus for their own benefit. So if what they need to do to gain power and resources involves them sucking off some dude, they will do it, regardless of the consequences for other people or even for their own moral principles, for their own self-respect. They'll have a lousy feeling if they think hard about it. They'll not have the same self-respect if they actually do things properly. But that's what a schlong sucker does. They sell out to themselves. They sell out their own self-respect for some other gain. And we know plenty of these people. We've covered one of them on our show. I believe it was episode 16. DJ Kerry's Grand Scam. DJ Kerry is a scammer. He's a schlong sucker. What do I mean by that? Well, what did DJ Kerry do? For those of you who are familiar with the story, he made it out to the public that he had a brain tumour. And he made it out as if he had found this expensive treatment in America that would help him with his brain tumour, that would help him recover for his health. And he made it out to the public that he didn't have enough money to fund this life-saving treatment. What, of course, happened? It got revealed that DJ Kerry never had a brain tumour. It was one big deception. And he scammed people out of money. People gave him money in good faith, and he betrayed their trust. He took their money for a condition that he did not have, for a treatment that he was never going to do. He's a scammer. So in other words, he sold out other people for, in this case, financial benefit, and he sold out himself. He sold out his own reputation for financial gain, and he got caught. Better still, DJ Carey is a schlong sucker. Now, we talked about in that episode, I don't think DJ Carey is a criminal. That's a different thing. Should DJ Carey go to prison? No. I think an argument could be made that he should not go to prison, because these people willingly gave him money. He did not force them to give him money at gunpoint or knife point. He just manipulated them into giving him money. So he is a scammer. He is a schlong sucker. He's a deceptive, manipulative individual who will sell out his own soul and sell out other people who care about him for some gain, for some resource that he's going to get on the other side of this supposed fair trade. Which, of course, there's nothing fair about it because he's scamming them. So that's DJ. DJ is a schlong sucker. Think about our story with Ukraine as our ally here in the UK. If you are watching from France, if you're watching from Germany, if you're watching from the UK, if you're watching from Europe, your country is probably an ally of Ukraine. And so as a result, some portion of your taxpayer money is probably being funneled to Ukraine's war effort, even though you have not been consulted about this particular issue. Interesting, huh? Here we have this war taking place. A war which you are funding as a taxpayer. And this is the thing. You haven't even got a say in it, in this particular war, in this peace plan. You've got a whole bunch of suits and ties making these decisions on your behalf. And what are these suits and ties telling you? What did I just say at the beginning of our episode? What has the United Kingdom's government decided to do in the last few days? Raise taxes! Even though they said a year ago that they would not do this. They said months ago they would not do this. They would not raise taxes. What have they done? They've raised taxes. They've raised the minimum wage, making it even more difficult for employers to take on employees because the employer now has to pay more to an employee. In this inflated economy, where things are more expensive, where economic times are difficult, where savings are dissolving, where the currency is devalued, here we have the minimum wage being raised, putting even more pressure on employers, making it even more difficult for people to get work because employers can't afford to take on employees because they have to pay more through this raised minimum wage. Not only do we have that, but as I've said, taxes have now been raised. So what do we have here, folks? We have taxes being raised. We have minimum wage being raised. Things that we were told would not happen. But now they are happening. Who is making these decisions? Political figures in the government. And as a result, could one make the argument, could an argument be made that people, citizens of these countries where governments are raising taxes, raising minimum wage, inflating the economy, sending taxpayer money off to fund an allies' war effort that has nothing to do with the country in which these citizens reside. These countries in which citizens are residing, where money's being funneled off to Ukraine, these actual countries have billion-pound black holes that need to be filled. And even though they have billion-pound black holes, we're still going to send money off to an ally, a foreign country, so that they can fight a war. And so here we have political figures telling us, oh no, taxes won't be raised. We won't do that. Q 2 days ago and taxes have been raised. And the excuses are already out. Well, it was to do with the previous government destroying what is happening here in this country. The excuses are out, even though we were told taxes wouldn't be raised. And now with taxes being raised, does that mean more of your taxpayer money can now be funneled towards Ukraine's war effort? Do you think that's a possibility? Could we speculate and say that even more money now of you, the taxpayer, will go towards this war effort in Ukraine? Why am I saying this? I'm saying this because we're talking about schlong suckers. What are schlong suckers? Well, we've already talked about it. Schlong suckers are people who will suck someone else off, sell out their own soul, sell out their people, scam their people, deceive their people into giving up resources unfairly in a trade that isn't actually fair. That's what a schlong sucker will do. They'll cut a deal at the expense of other people. They will let their morals drift out through the window, and then they will close the window and never let them back into the house again. Pretend that they never exist. That's what a schlong sucker will do. They will be so deceptive, so manipulative, have such a lack of a moral compass, that they will sell out their own soul, sell out their own people, for some gain, some financial gain or some other gain with relation to some other resource. And so as a result, could we say that the people in charge of raising taxes, raising minimum wage, bringing about an inflated economy, are these people schlong suckers? Have they cut a deal with someone and sucked someone off at the expense of other people? Could we make that argument? That argument could perhaps be made. And so this is the thing. On the one side, we have gullible suckers. On the other side, we have schlong suckers. This is the thing, and this is the lesson from tonight's show, folks. The question is, do you want to be either of these two things? Do you want to be a gullible sucker? Or do you want to be a schlong sucker? The answer, of course, is you want to be neither. If you are a gullible sucker, you are primed for exploitation. If you are a schlong sucker, you are going to be looking for the gullible suckers to exploit. That's the relationship between the two. That's why they're at opposite ends of the spectrum. Schlong suckers will cut a deal and do whatever it takes. If they are, as I said in the example, if you have got a heterosexual male who has to suck someone off for some benefit to them at the expense of other people, a schlong sucker will do that all day. They will sell out themselves, they'll sell out other people. They will do things that look deplorable. They will do things that look deceptive, manipulative, disgusting, things with a lack of honour. That's what a schlong sucker does, because they'll suck off whoever is going to give them benefit to their own existence, regardless of the consequences that are now shipped onto other people. And this is the thing. You hear me say on Bandido Talks, we talk a lot about deception and honesty, and about how an honest man is a predictable man. And you've heard me say that we are all deceptive. We are all manipulative in our own ways. But what we want to do is not live a life whereby we are literally undermining and hurting the existence of other people. When I am manipulating or, quote, deceiving someone into getting some sort of benefit for me, there's a way in which we do this. We use words like deception. We use things like manipulation. People don't like those words. But we all do it. But this is the thing. We do it in the context of an overall fair trade agreement. Because the people on the other side are trying to get as much out of the trade as we are. This is normal. This isn't unusual. This isn't deplorable behaviour. When you've got two humans involved in some sort of transaction, each human is going to try, within the bounds of what we're going to call an honourable trade agreement, you're going to try and get as much as you can in as far away as possible. And does that involve some deception? Does that involve some manipulation? Does that involve some exaggeration of the truth from time to time? Of course it does. And anybody who tells you that they do not do that is literally being deceptive right before you. We all do this. But it's all about skill, isn't it? It's all about how damaging, how unfair is the trade. Because it's normal to have some level of manipulation. Communication is manipulation. We've talked about this before. It's just the words that we use. People feel allergic to those words. Manipulation, deception. But we're always doing this within the framework of what we're going to call an honourable trade agreement. An honourable transaction between people. DJ Kerry did not engage in an honourable transaction. He took money from people with the perceived agreement of, yes, DJ, you will pay us back. Of course, DJ didn't do that. So he showed a lack of honour. He didn't keep his word. He scammed people out of money. He's a schlong sucker. He did whatever it took to get money. Didn't matter if he sold out his own principles, his own moral values. Didn't matter if he sold out other people. He did what it took. He did what was necessary for him to get resources, and that was it. We don't want to engage with life in that way. Does that mean DJ is a criminal? No. It just means he's a human that can't be trusted. It means he is a human with a poor reputation. That's all that means is that. He has a poor he has damaged his reputation among the public. Fine. He will incur the consequences and the negative outcomes that come with people knowing that he's a deceptive piece of shit. That he's a schlong sucker. And this is the thing. You want to understand this. You want to understand the perspective of the gullible sucker. You want to understand the perspective of the schlong sucker. We don't want to be either. But we want to understand each. Because for all you know, you could be involved in a transaction with a schlong sucker. And you need to be able to identify said schlong sucker so that you don't get exploited. If you're a gullible sucker engaging in a transaction with a schlong sucker, you as the gullible sucker are going to get horrendously exploited. Because the schlong sucker will do whatever it takes. He'll sell out his own soul. He'll sell out anybody just to get some benefit. Some benefit, some resource, some increase, whatever the resource is, whatever the increasing resource, whatever the valuable resource is on the other end of this interaction or this transaction. And so it's not that we want to live an existence at either ends of this spectrum, but we want to understand so that if we are in a situation where we are having to deal with either a gullible sucker or a schlong sucker, because gullible suckers can also be, let's just say, problematic in their own way. Because if you're dealing with a gullible sucker, then that means you're dealing with someone who has a very distorted worldview. And you need to be able to identify those people. Because let's say you have someone in your inner circle who's a gullible sucker, but you think they're not. You think they're trustworthy, and they may be trustworthy. They may have honour, but they may also have a horrendous worldview in terms of how distorted it is, in terms of their understanding of the facts of reality. And if you put all your eggs in the basket of that person, of that gullible sucker, you're going to literally inherit the distorted worldview of that person if you offload your thinking to them. And so you want to be able to identify a gullible sucker. It doesn't mean they're a horrible human. It doesn't mean that, in a sense, we think of them in any less a fashion. But we need to be careful, because if we're dealing with gullible suckers, we don't want to have them elevated on a pedestal. Regardless of whether they are related to us through blood, through biology, through genes, or whether we have a friendship with them or a trade relationship. If we have some gullible sucker in front of us, we need to be aware of that. Because we don't want to tell the gullible sucker something that they may then tell to somebody else. Oh yeah, I was talking to such and such, and he said that he's going to be doing this deal with such and such for this amount of money, and they go way off and tell all your business to other people because they're gullible. They think that telling this to other people isn't a big deal. Because, oh sure, if I tell it to other people, they won't say it to their friends. No, people wouldn't do that. You are gullible though. That type of person is gullible. And so we need to be sure that when we're interacting with people who are gullible, that we're not telling them important things. Because the sheer gullible nature of a gullible sucker will mean that they'll take your information at face value and probably tell it to somebody else. And if that information's important and confidential, now it's in the public sphere. And now you have a problem. Because you didn't correctly identify a gullible sucker. You gave them information that you shouldn't have gave them. And now as a result, it's public knowledge what you've said. Because the gullible sucker has went off, not in a malicious sense, but just in a gullible, stupid sense, and told that information to other people. So it's important to identify gullible suckers. Because number one, we don't want to end up telling them things that end up getting passed on to other people. And we also don't want to be consuming blindly their insights about the world, given that their insights are highly distorted. Because they themselves are gullible and uninitiated, and they don't critically think. They don't fact check their sources. They just consume stuff and they just believe it. And then they pass on their distorted information. So we need to be able to identify gullible suckers for those reasons, so that we're not giving them information that could put us at a competitive disadvantage or at some just disadvantage in general, and we don't want them to be consuming their information blindly by offloading our thinking to them, no matter how much we trust them or think we trust them. Likewise, schlong suckers, it goes without saying. Schlong suckers will do whatever it takes. They will suck off whoever they need to suck off in order to get benefit in their own existence. It doesn't matter if they sell their own soul in the process. It doesn't matter if they lose every ounce of their self-respect. It doesn't matter if they scam other people and they throw other people under the bus. They don't care as long as they are getting the most out of any transaction. We need to be also able to identify those people, because schlong suckers are always on the lookout for exploiting other people. And so as a result, you don't want to be gullible. Because if you are a gullible sucker and you encounter a schlong sucker, you are getting exploited. You're going to come out the other end of that transaction or deal or interaction in a negative sense. You are going to be the one who loses out. And so as a result, we want to be able to identify schlong suckers. We want to be aware that they exist in the population. That there will be people in the population, like DJ Carey, who they give the appearance as being trustworthy, honourable, of high standing within society, when they're really just cutting a deal that scams you out of money, that throws you under the bus, and literally sells their own soul out to other people. We need to be aware that such people exist in the population. We need to then engage our own critical thinking. So if we end up coming across someone, we can start to sense, use our understanding, throw out some little questions that are involved in a sort of subtle cross-examination to make sure that the person on the other side of this interaction doesn't have some malicious intents or some malicious, let's just say, ambitions for our transaction, for our interaction. We want to be able to identify the schlong suckers because they are always on the lookout to exploit other people. We don't want to be exploited. Who wants to be exploited willingly? So we need to be aware of both of these types of people. And that's why we call tonight's show the two suckers. They are suckers that exist at either end of the spectrum. And we need to be aware that they exist. And the key here, folks, the key, how do we counteract gullible suckers from getting in the road of our own successful existence? And how do we counteract schlong suckers from getting in the road of our own successful existence here on earth? Well, we need to become initiated. And what does that mean? We've already talked about it. You need to start understanding that the world is theatre, There's drama and theatre and theatricality. Schlong suckers will use this to try and hoodwink you. Schlong suckers they'll dump out a whole bunch of theatre and drama to try and divert your attention, to try and distract you, while they exploit you because you're not paying attention to the important things. Just like your taxpayer money. The exploitation. You're being given the illusion that taxes won't be raised. You're being told that this won't happen, that won't happen. You earnestly believe it. You think, oh, it'll be fine. I've been told by such an institution that this won't happen. Such a political figure has said this won't happen. Boom! Rug pull. You are now exploited. Because you haven't been paying attention. You're uninitiated. You're offloading your thinking to institutions and political figures. Giving them the benefit of the doubt. So it's important that when we're dealing with schlong suckers in this case, we want to know what we have on our hands when we're engaging with people. Because who knows? You could have a gullible sucker, you could have a schlong sucker. You never know who you're interacting with. How do you counteract them? You need to start engaging critically with the world. You need to stop offloading your thinking to other people and institutions. You need to start critically thinking about the why. Why is somebody telling me this? Why is this article reporting this? You need to fact check your sources of information. You need to run a background check and see what is their past history. Are they reliable? Have they typically been administering or giving out accurate information that does represent reality? Are they humble when they make mistakes? Do they admit and say, yes, hands up, I made a mistake. I'm going to update now my own informational system, let's just say. And now going forward, I'm going to bear that in mind. We want to start looking at the world that way. We have to engage critically with the world to make sure that we either don't get exploited or we don't find ourselves in a vulnerable situation. Because when you deal with either gullible suckers or schlong suckers, even though they have different modes of action, we could say, if you are not aware of what you're dealing with, either way, you're going to be at a disadvantage. You're going to find yourself in a situation that isn't optimal, let's say. And that's the key takeaway from tonight's show, folks. Being aware that such individuals exist. And it doesn't mean that we shut ourselves away from society. It doesn't mean that we shut ourselves away from new information. Because new information could be bogus new information, it could be high quality new information. It could be either or. And we always have to get information from where? We have to get information from a source. It could be an online source, a source in the real world, a real person. Whatever it is, could be AI. And this is the thing. We never want, I'm going to keep repeating this, because this is how you deal with gullible suckers ruining your existence or making your existence less optimal. And this is how you deal with schlong suckers so that they don't exploit you and make your existence more miserable than what it needs to be. How do you deal with them? You have to stop offloading your thinking. Stop offloading your thinking. You need to think critically, think for yourself first. Think about what's actually coming your direction. Think about why it's coming your direction. Why has this person or why has this source told me this? Why are they putting it out into the airwaves? And then you need to run a background check. You need to fact check your source of information. Make sure that they actually have some credibility. Make sure that when they do make mistakes, because everybody makes mistakes, nobody has a 100% flawless record. Make sure that when they do make mistakes, they have the integrity, the honesty to stand up and say, I made a mistake, and now going forward, I'm going to bear this in mind to make sure that I don't repeat the mistake. You want to be looking out for these things. And then, of course, you can cross-reference your thinking with credible sources of information. There's nothing wrong with that. But you must first find, is the source credible or not? And then even if the source is credible, you don't want to offload your thinking either. That's the thing. You always want to critically engage with any information, because you never know. Unless you critically engage with information, how do you know if it's bogus, garbage, or if it's high quality? If you just let it enter your mind and don't put it through the filter. It's just like the water example that we were talking about. You could be looking at water and it looks clean, it looks fine, but for all you know, there could be some microscopic bacteria or pathogens, some microscopic nasties in that water that you can't see, but if you were to put it through a filter, you would filter them out. And your water would be a step more pure, a step closer to being more pure. And so that's what we want to do with information. We want to take the information, even if the information looks good on a first glance. Just like if the water looks good on a first glance, we still want to pass it through the filter. In this case, we want to pass it through the filter of our mind. We don't want to get sloppy. We don't want to get lazy. Don't let your energy conservation defeat you. Always filter your information, just like you should filter your water or get your water from a reputable source. Especially if there are some question marks about the quality of the water. If there are question marks surrounding the quality of your water, it's probably good to filter it. If there are question marks around the quality of your information, it is also good to filter it through your mind. Don't just let it get in there without going through some checks and balances. And that is how we combat the gullible suckers and the schlong suckers. We ensure that we don't put ourselves in a disadvantageous situation by giving information to a gullible sucker or by taking on board distorted information from them without fact checking it. And likewise, with a schlong sucker, we also don't want to get exploited for them, because they are always on the lookout to exploit people. They are more than happy to sell their souls and to throw people under the bus. They will suck off whoever they need to suck off in order to get what it is that they want out of any transaction. And you don't want to be at the butt of that negative side of the deal, let's just say. You don't want to be at the butt of that. You want to be able to see that, run the background check, don't offload your thinking, be critical about the why this person is saying this, and then cross-reference your thinking with other credible sources that you have identified. That is how we can avoid the problems that come with gullible suckers and with schlong suckers. Okay, so how long have we been going for? 1 hour and 38 minutes. Gosh, when the Bandido gets up and going, he just totally loses track of time. Such is life. But we are here to reflect on a Friday evening. It's all about reflection. And reflect we have. So anyway, let's have a check on our live chat. Let's see if you guys have been engaging with the show, if you've anything to say, any insights to drop into the comments of our live chat. Of course, we haven't been particularly successful the last couple of Friday nights. We haven't had anybody in the live chat in our last few Friday night segments. So let's see if we can turn the tables tonight. Let's see if there's anybody in the live chat. Let's have a look and see. Let's get over here. See what it is you're saying. Now, we have a few comments. In our live chat. Let's get into these. Let me just click. There's a little button I need to click here because I have in the past actually missed some of our live chats because I didn't click a particular button. But the Bandido is learning. He's learning bit by bit. Hopefully, there are no gremlins. I don't think there are any gremlins. So we're going to continue. Let's get into the live chat. Let's see what you guys are saying about tonight's show. Let's go from the top. I'll go from the top down. So the first comment that we have is Groiper Dave. Griper Dave's back in the chat again. Old Griper Dave made his appearance last week. Let's see what Griper Dave has to say about tonight's show. He says the following. If the political world is a theatre, who is the director? With the raised eyebrow emoji. Who is the director? Griper Dave. He is asking, if the political world is a theatre, who is the director? Well, you see, this is the thing. Who specifically is actually directing the operations? Who is directing the theatre? It could be an interesting thing to find out. But really, if we are aware that the world is a theatre, if the political world in particular, as Griper Dave is saying, if we know that it is a theatre, then who is actually running it isn't particularly important. It may be interesting to find out who's pulling the strings. But you see, this is the thing, folks. We don't actually need to know. It's not the critical piece of information that you may think it is. Is it interesting? Would it make a good topic of discussion if we did know? Yes, it would. But the more important thing here is that we are aware that it is theatre. The problem is theatricality and deception. They are powerful agents to the uninitiated. And so if you are initiated, you are at least aware that it is happening. Now, who is doing it? That's a different question. But this is the thing, folks. Even if you did know, even if Griper Dave did know who was actually pulling the strings, who makes the political world move? Let's say we actually knew. What can we do? What can we actually do? Because the reality is, folks, we don't own the military. We don't own all the weapons and the guns. We talked last week on episode 19, I think it was our Sunday special with the Ukrainian peace plan. We talked about the idea of going out with our pitchfork and standing in front of the government buildings, waving our pitchfork. Remember, folks, you are one person. And even if you have a group, you're only a group. It is very difficult, almost impossible, to fight an institution. You are not going to win. The institution has more guns. It has more weapons than you. It has more artillery. It has more soldiers. It has more power. You're not going to win that battle. And as we talked about last week, that would be a misuse of your time and energy. You're fighting a losing battle, in other words. So this is the thing. Griper Dave says, if the political world is a theatre, who is the director? Who is the director would be an interesting reveal. It would be interesting. But it's actually not critical. And the reason why it's not critical is because even if you did know, there's nothing you can do about it. Because the director is likely going to have the support of the institutions and the guns. And so as a result, you're not going to be able to fight in that traditional sense. So what you can do, though, is you can make sure that you increase your probability of not being exploited. If you are a gullible sucker, you are at an increased probability of being exploited. Awareness is the key. Knowing the exact names isn't actually critical. It's interesting, but it's not critical. Because you can't do anything about it, even if you did know. But this is the thing. If you're aware that the political world in this case is a theatre, then you can start to take measures right now to make sure that you don't get absorbed by the theatricality of it all. you can start to take measures to make sure your attention doesn't get diverted, and to make sure that you are not distracted, and to make sure that your arse isn't up in the air while your head's in the sand. You can actually take tangible steps towards improving your own existence without actually knowing who the director is. You can actually find ways to make sure that you are at as low a risk of exploitation as possible. Because that's the thing. We don't want to be at the butt of an unfair transaction with other people. We don't want to be at the butt of exploitation. And whether or not we actually know the director of this entire theatre, it doesn't actually affect that. It doesn't affect us being able to take steps towards reducing our risk of being exploited by people or institutions. And so, yes, indeed, Griper Dave is correct. If the political world is a theatre, it would be interesting to know who the director is. But it's not critical. And that's actually a very optimistic message. Because sometimes people might think, I need to know everybody who's involved in pulling the strings of this entire operation. When in reality, you actually don't. You just need to know that said strings are being pulled. You need to understand the strategies that are in play to try and divert and distract you. And it is your awareness, it is your ability to defeat your own energy conservation mechanism, to not offload your thinking to other people, to run background checks on sources of information, and then cross-reference your own critical independent thinking with these credible sources. These are the ways in which we can ensure that we are not ensnared in the traps. And all of that we can do without knowing a single name of who is directing the theatre. The power actually lies, ultimately, in our own being. And that, perhaps, is a very optimistic way that we can look at this. We don't need to know the nitty-gritty details of the names. But a theatre it is. It is indeed a theatre. We cannot deny that. It is most certainly a theatre. And so as a result... let's see. Before I keep going, I just want to check and see, is there a problem with our stream? I've just got a message, but I've got the message late. It was 51 minutes ago. So it seems like there was a little bit of audio fraying. Comes in for a second every 50 seconds or so, then it goes. Not sure what's causing it, as nothing happens on screen. There could be another gremlin in the stream. Let us see. I'm not exactly sure. I'm going to plow on here. I'll have to take a look at this afterwards. I'll have to take a look and see. We're going to continue. We're going to continue going here, and hopefully this isn't a very disruptive gremlin that we have in the stream. But anyway, that was Griper Dave. Now, let's have a look at our second comment. This is from Quizzed22. Old Quizzed is in the chat. Quizzed22. We love when Quizzed gets into the live chat. Let's see what Quizzed is saying. But we are initiated. Aren't we, Bruce? I think Quizzed knows the source of this quote. I think Quizzed is familiar with the particular movie that I am quoting. For anybody who didn't see last week's show, you may not be aware of this quote. But it would appear that Quizzed is indeed familiar, because the wording of his comment would suggest that perhaps we could say Quizzed is indeed initiated. Quizzed is not uninitiated. He is initiated. He even knows the origin of the quote. But we are initiated. Aren't we, Bruce? Okay. Let's see. We have another comment from Quizzed again. Let's see what Quizzed is. Maybe I've read these out in the wrong order. Maybe the Bandido isn't reading these out in the right order. Let's see. So Quizzed, the second comment is as follows. Episode 20, and we are getting schlong chat from the Bandido. Come a long way on this channel with the crying smiley face emoji. Well, this is the thing. Once we start to get into it, we have to think of innovative ways to get our concepts across to the audience. And when I was thinking on the spot, how should we deal with the different types of suckers? Are we just going to call them sucker 1 and sucker 2? That's a bit boring. That's a bit lacking in creativity. For a man here who's saying, the Bandido's saying he's going to start releasing some original music onto the tube. For someone who claims to have a creative streak running through their being, we couldn't just say sucker 1 and sucker 2. We would have to say something a little more creative. We would have to put them into more creative categories. And so this is where the gullible sucker and the schlong sucker comes from. And so as a result, Quizzed, you are correct. We have indeed come a long way on the channel. We're already at episode 20, and we're already getting into a schlong chat. It is a schlong chat, in more ways than one. We've been going for a mighty long time, an hour and 50 odd minutes, talking about a whole bunch of different information. But anyway, we must indulge our creativity. We can't have things too plain Jane, can we? Hopefully that helps the audience to remember the key concepts from tonight's show. Who knows? Maybe the audience agrees, maybe the audience disagrees. But, needless to say, we have gullible suckers, we have schlong suckers. So as a result, we need to be familiar with each type of sucker that resides at each end of the spectrum. And so if that means a schlong show, or a schlong chat, Quizzed, then so be it. Then so be it. Okay. So I think that is all of our comments in the live chat. Let me just make sure that I haven't missed any, because as I've said, I've missed a few before. That seems to be everything. So I want to thank Groiper Dave and Quizzed22 for getting into the live chat. The engagement with the show is always appreciated. It would appear that our commenters, our subscribers, they are giving me indications that they are indeed initiated. It would appear that Quizzed is initiated. It would appear that Groiper Dave is also initiated. So this is good to see. We have initiated folks within the Bandido Talks community. May the initiations continue. But that is all from the live chat. So I'm hoping when I go back and review the episode, there seems to have been a little bit of technical difficulty. From what I can tell, there's been a little bit of technical difficulty. Seems to be some audio fraying. Maybe I've got the microphone too high. Maybe there's too much gain maybe on the microphone. Maybe the Bandido gets too excited. He raises the volume too much. Maybe that's a correction we'll have to make going forward. But anyway, I'll check that later. Hopefully the show has been coming through just fine. Hopefully the gremlin hasn't been wreaking too much havoc. But anyway, if you've enjoyed tonight's show, folks, feel free to give it a like, give a thumbs up if you thought that there was some value to be had in tonight's show. Of course, if you're seeing the live stream after the live event has been posted, get down into the comments section. We've had Quizzed in the live chat with a couple of comments. We've had Groiper Dave in with a comment too. They're letting me know what they think about the show. They're engaging with the show. I would encourage you folks to get down to the comments section. Let me know what you think about what we've talked about tonight. And then finally, if you find what we do here on Bandido Talks valuable, interesting, insightful, useful in some way, as I've already said, feel free to subscribe to the channel. We are live on air here on YouTube, 7 p.m. every Friday, Saturday and Sunday at 7 p.m. Irish time. You will always catch the Bandido Friday, Saturday and Sunday, unless there is an earth-shattering event where the Bandido cannot make it, or if there's a gremlin in the live stream, which could always happen. We're always live Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 7 p.m. Remember, folks, Tuesday, the 2nd of December, this Tuesday coming, we are going to have our first guest interview. Our first guest interview will be dropping as a premiere this Tuesday at 7 p.m. here on YouTube. So make sure to put a note in your diary. 7 p.m. this Tuesday, premiere of our first guest interview. It'll be a really good show. Really good show. I think you're going to enjoy it. Lots of value to be had for all of you business folks out there. That'll be dropping on Tuesday. And I think with all of that, folks, that's been a long show tonight. It's been a schlong show tonight, one could say. Maybe that's what Quizzed would say. One of our commenters in the live chat. He said it was a schlong chat. So it was a schlong show. But anyway, hopefully there was some value in it. And perhaps we've got our weekend off to let's just say we've got our weekend off to a successful start. Let's hope that's the case. And let's hope there hasn't been too much disruption on the live stream. But anyway, with all that being said, folks, I hope you enjoy your Friday evening. You enjoy the start to your weekend. And all being well, I will see you here tomorrow night, 7 p.m, here on YouTube, Irish time. We'll be back with some news on the tube, our Saturday segment. So I hope you can join me then, 7 p.m. tomorrow evening, here on YouTube. And with that said, folks, that is over and out from the Bandido.